as you can see there, I got a fly sitting up there. I was thinking of some flies I could do some videos on, and this is one that I've actually been tying myself. It's December, end of December, going into January here, and one of my favorite things to do this type of year is you actually get to start swinging some flies on some of the local tailwaters, lower Yuba, lower Feather, even the lower Sac to some degree. And most of the flies that I'm swinging at this time take some sort of variation of the one you see in front of you. And I don't even really have a name for this. I just call it a kind of basically swung smolt fly. And basically what you're imitating is all the basic emerging little salmon fry that are coming out of the rocks and hanging out that were laid in September and October. And this fly, you can dead drift this as an alvin, you can swing it, and you can tie it in all sorts of different colors. You probably even fish it for bass or winter spotted bass, any type of smolt pattern. So yeah, show you how to tie this one. Pretty straightforward, pretty easy. The hook I'm going to use, it's a Gamakatsu B10S, and I'm going to throw a 3/16 black nickel bead on it. Pretty standard streamer hook. And again, you can, a lot of my flies, like, I try to keep them pretty versatile. You can throw some lead eyes on this, tie it upside down, you can tie it without a bead. Doesn't really matter. This is a fly that's basically meant to be fished off the bottom or in slower, slacker water. So I don't tie it really heavy like a big streamer you'd pound the banks with or something like that. Start it first thing, just going to start the thread. I tie with, for this fly, white 6/0. Work it right down to the middle. Then actually the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to flip the hook over. Okay, because we're going to kind of tie it in two parts, a top and a bottom. And the first material that I'm going to tie in is kind of a new material to me. It's called Ripple Ice. Hairline makes it. This is Minnow Mix. Okay, so it's got some UV crystal in it. And I really just started tying with this last couple months. I haven't even experimented with it in any of my striper flies or striper applications. Really tied some of my winter bass flies with it, but nothing any larger, any bigger stuff, which I'm kind of excited to do. So I tie it in just straight to the bottom of the hook shank, about halfway in, and you can vary this, vary the flash as to kind of what you think your fish or your area. One thing I do, you'll see here, is this flash is going to end up being in the middle of the fly, so it's not as pronounced, so to say, as it looks right there. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to tie in some gray Sanyo's laser yarn. Another new material to me, but Greg Sanyo is not a new person to me. Stuff's good for any type of streamers, bait fish, type of application. It's like a Antron, kind of almost like a dubbing, but kind of trim it up. Lay it right on top. Again, just like that ripple flash. Kind of split it around the hook point, and then I'm going to take this excess and do the same thing. And I kind of, whenever I take the excess, I kind of give it some pulls just to not make it look like I just uniformly cut it. As I was saying, Greg's a Midwest fisherman and tyer, and I've never met him, but I know him via his books, his materials, online stuff that he does. And if you've never checked it out, he's got a great blog with a lot of instructions, a lot of kind of Midwest steelhead and smallmouth flies. And if you're not familiar with the Midwest kind of fisheries, you have all these tributaries that run into the Great Lakes, and they call them steelhead, as they are of steelhead genetics, but basically giant lake run rainbows that swim up the tributaries, and that they fish very, very similar to how we fish for our valley fish. They nymph and they swing kind of bait fishy types of patterns, and they really do Greg in particular does a really cool job of blending kind of traditional steelhead fly tying techniques with more trouty match the hatch type of style imitations, if that makes sense. So another one of his materials I'm going to use here it's called his laser dub. This is in white, and it's a long fiber dubbing, and I'm just going to take a little bit of white and tie it in right underneath, just to give this fish a little bit of a white belly. And as you can see, that ripple flash, while very obtrusive to start with and super flashy, is getting kind of buried in material. At that point, I'm going to flip the fly over and make sure everything's about the right inch, right length. I like it to be about an inch, inch and a half. But again, one thing that I do with a lot of my bait fish, stripers to, trout or salmon smolt imitations, is I tie them long so I can trim them. It's a lot easier to make a fly shorter than it is to make a fly longer. What I'm doing here is I got some red SLF dubbing, and I'm just going to give it kind of a gill, or even, if you really want to get technical, maybe even the remnants of an egg sac. Next, in on the top, I'm going to tie in the top, and I'm going to use medium olive laser hair. Again, you can see this is pretty long fibered stuff, so you can fold it over like that, kind of pull it if there's some longer outliers, and just set it right on the top. Center it up. At this point, I'll trim this. Make sure it centers itself up there. One thing I'll do at this point too is I hit it with a little UV thin to prevent it from spinning. As you pile this stuff on top, if you don't secure it, the whole kind of fly will spin around the hook shank. So it just creates a little bit of the durability to the fly. Then at that point, if you've watched any of my other videos, you've heard me talk about lateral lines on bait fish is something that I'm really become I don't know if it's a supporter or a proponent of. I'm going to add some Montana Fly Company Lucent wrap into this, and this is a cool new material. It comes in a couple different sizes. This is the gray barred black fine bar. They also make it in a longer bar, or a longer material, and it comes in this kind of long thing, and I think the idea is that you would palmer this around something, but I cut off little pieces. If you see here, there's a couple strands, and I'm basically using these as almost like, in our striper flies we'd call them gills. If you're tying in a Delta Clouser, you're tying in some crystal flash for cheeks or gills, but these basically I just tie them in like that, And they kind of go down the side of the fly looking maybe like par marks or something like that. Then I'll take that laser yarn, or laser, and tie in a little bit more on top. Then I'm going to take a little bit of the laser dub. This is the olive. Put it on top of the laser hair, just to give it a little bit different. It's got a little darker look to it. Got a little couple UV fibers in it that kind of give that top a little different look. And then it's actually dubbed, at least that's what it says on the package. I don't use it a ton for dub, but I'll take a little bit of it and take it and just give it a nice head. Then tie it off. And at this point, usually with any of my bait fish, if you take that, I kind of will fan it out a little bit like this. I'll kind of give it a little profile trim. I don't want it to look just like a wedge, but at the same time, I want it to have that kind of nice taper, like that. And that's about it. I'll trim, maybe get that bottom a little longer, but you can really obsess over this, and in the end I'm not quite sure it really really matters to the fish. So there you have it, just nice little basic smolt pattern or bait fish pattern. You can swing it, you can dead drift it, it's nice and light. You can cast it on a single-handed rod, double-handed rod, add it to a weighted setup, fish it on a weighted line. The only thing, it is going to ride hook point down, you know, so if you really are looking at, you know, getting this thing down and dragging it across the bottom, this isn't the fly. But get out there, swing it around where there was some salmon reds a few months ago and see what happens. Alright, thanks for watching.